All right, and now we're back. We will have Ashley Codianni, who is CNN's Senior Director for Social Media Worldwide. And some of the things that she's been doing other than that are being Director of News Video for Mashable, led the Washington, D.C. Bureau of Now This News, and was a producer for MSNBC's Way Too Early and Morning Joe. One reason we're talking a lot about social media is, of course, how inextricable social media and mobile media are, and we really wouldn't have one without the other. And CNN is one of the leaders in extending their brand worldwide with social media. Ashley.
Hi. So how many folks here are young journalists, aspiring journalists, in school? Do we have a lot of you in here? Oh, good, okay. So I started my career, and I think this is helpful for you guys, I started my career in television. I was covering the 2008 presidential campaign with NBC News. And digital, this word digital wasn't really a thing yet. You can see here I'm totally aging myself, but I joined Twitter in 2010. So my job just completely didn't exist when I started in the industry. I was very much in the TV landscape. And then as time went on, it became quite evident that, you know, it was time for me to pivot. It was time for me to move forward and sort of figure out what this digital and this social was. And so here I am at CNN. So I'm going to take you through today, how a major media organization has navigated multi-platform storytelling in mobile, particularly with mobile video. And then I'm going to look at more directly how our reporters out in the field are using and working with my team to do mobile and social storytelling. So when you're thinking about yourself, if you are a reporter, you want to be a reporter, there are a lot of lessons and tools and tricks that you can do that will help you when you're out in the field, and think about all of the ways you can sort of spread your reporting across many different platforms. So this is CNN, right? So we're here. CNN.com. This is sort of the nucleus. Television.com right here. And then you sort of see where we're available in our core, which is our desktop, our mobile app, our mobile web, and CNN Go. And then we sort of branch out to then how we connect that to TV. And with the Amazon Fire, the Roku, the Apple TV, the Android, and Xfinity. And then you kind of get into my world right here. So my world is how I take that mobile web content, how I take that desktop content, and how do I create bespoke content across all of the different social media platforms that we're on. And by the way, this keeps growing, right? So every year a new bubble pops up, and it's my job to figure out how do I program and create content for that new bubble. And then we get into a lot of the other sort of Amazon Echo we've talked a lot about here, Google Assistant, and other ways that we're actually programming our content out to things like Samsung Edge and the Samsung Watch and Apple Watch and all of that. But my world is the Facebooks, the Twitters, the Kicks, the Lines, the Instagrams, the Snapchats, all of that. And why? Why do I have all of those bubbles and all those in such a large team? Because there's such a large audience that's out there, right? There are so many ways that I could be reaching people in the places that there are on their mobile device with CNN's content. So I'm going to take you through just a few examples of what programming across all of these multimedia platforms looks like. So we had a reporter, Moni Basu. She's incredible. She went on one of the most dangerous migration trips from Libya to Italy. We were on the boat. We had a video producer that was there on the scene. We had, obviously, Moni, the reporter. And this is what it looked like on desktop. We had a very beautiful long-form story. We had a beautiful digital video. We had also had it was also built in a way that it looked beautiful on a mobile device when you were on our owned and operated app. And then this is what it looks like when it reaches my team. So I'll just quickly talk about this. So it went up as a Facebook post, just your standard, how you would share on a Facebook feed. Then it obviously went on Twitter with all of the images. But then we did sort of a build your own adventure on Facebook Messenger so that you could dive deeper into the story step by step through a series of trails and triggers. And then we built a special execution on our messaging app Line, which, if you're not familiar, is very popular in the Asia Pacific, particularly Japan. We have 5 million users for CNN Online, reaches a massive audience. Then obviously Apple News is there. We alerted it online to that massive audience. We created special vignettes for Instagram video. We didn't have Instagram stories yet. Had we had Instagram stories, we would have built something very specific to follow the path of the boat. You know what? I lied to you. We did have Instagram stories at the time, because there it is. It's right there. We did do it. So that was available at the time. And then we built a subtitled video specifically for Facebook. This particular case, we didn't have a square video because the video really lent itself to the full 16:9 experience. But we'll talk a little bit later about building video for mobile devices on social. But this one stayed the 16:9 full length. And then on Kik, we had that same choose your own experience. You know, we created a way that a user could follow the route of the boat on Kik. And so you start with this, but then it distributes out to these several different platforms. And that's sort of what my team is doing. Then we have the Olympics. So the Olympics, for those who don't know, NBC sort of owns all of that coverage, right? All of that video coverage. But I had a producer on my team who is a messaging apps producer. Literally blew my mind. I love that we have that position at CNN. I love that it was created. Wouldn't have something, again, that didn't exist a few years ago. We sent the producer down to Rio. Why? Because we have all these platforms to fill content with. So you can see she took us along, this is just a snapshot of her day. She took us along a walk on the beach in Kik, where she just updated, took users with her on that journey. We did an Instagram story, same. We had a Facebook Messenger experience where you could deep dive. And then we obviously are a big fan of Twitter Moments. It's a really great way to just, cater to that platform swiping through. And then we did 32 Facebook Lives from Rio. So we would take the athletes when they were available. They would do their hits on New Day. They would do their hits for TV, and then they would come to us and they would do their hits on Facebook Live, which was great. Again, it was a nice way to sort of circumvent and be valuable in the social space with all the Olympics content when we didn't actually own the video or couldn't use the video. And so this is another just sort of demonstration of how the Facebook Messenger experience works. So we prompt our users, we say, let's go. They can choose, do they want to see the murals or do they want to see the people? Same thing with stories. Now, we're all obviously familiar with stories now. Stories have become a really incredible storytelling tool for us. It's really allowed for our reporters who are either in North Korea, which you'll see later, our reporters who are in Puerto Rico, our reporters who were in Houston, who were in Florida, covering all of the latest events. It's such a personal and immediate way to connect with the audience in a very raw and authentic way. So we are a huge fan of stories. Also, the geolocating does help with engagement and building of followers. If you go live on Facebook, you get the push notifications, a really great way to sort of build up that audience if that's something that you're looking to do. Kik, this is an example of how we invited folks to take a walk with us. And obviously, Twitter Moments we talked about. So I just want to dive in really quickly to a very specific example of a few of our reporters at CNN. So we are fortunate enough to have reporters all over the world. And with that, I want to make sure we're taking advantage of that, right? We have Will Ripley. He was in North Korea, one of the only Western TV journalists at the time. And I want to make sure that when he's doing hits with Jake Tapper, I know that the audience that I'm working with might not be watching TV at 4 o'clock. But I can bet that they're on their mobile device, and I can bet that they're scrolling through their Facebook feeds, and they're on Twitter, and they're in Snapchat, and some of them are on Kik, some of them are online. So I need to make sure every single person that I can possibly let know knows that we are covering North Korea with really powerful storytelling. So how do we do that? So Will is great. I work with Will directly, my team does, and we develop really just beautiful pieces from him aside from his TV hits. So this is actually his Instagram feed. If you're not following Will Ripley, he is just a window into North Korea. He goes so frequently that he's great to follow. He's based in Tokyo, so his stories and his Instagram are great anyway, but I think these are just some of the most powerful. He uses Instagram in an incredibly powerful way to tell the stories that he's covering. So this is his Instagram feed. We're able to recurate and reuse all of this. I encourage him to post because, again, this is a place where not a lot of people are able to experience. And then, of course, I have him use his mobile phone, right? So your mobile phone is such an incredible and powerful tool to let everybody know where you are and what you're doing. And thankfully, Will does that for CNN. So he will take videos and he'll send them to my team and then we'll repackage them. So this is an example of a video that he shot. We repackaged with both material that we were getting in-house, but also from him directly from North Korea. And I'll play it for you here. And this is the Square Facebook video that I was just referencing, why we had a 16:9 earlier and we have a square. So for us, it's all about that thumb stopping, right? How much real estate can I take up on that mobile screen to make somebody stop and watch? And this dimension obviously helps facilitate that.
It's not even 5 a.m. yet. I got woken up a few minutes ago with a call from reminders saying that we need to put on suits, bring light gear, and leave the hotel right now for a major event. We've been given these press bands, which we will now have to wear on our arms. It's a convoy of buses heading out. So we have been told that we need to leave our cell phones here in the vehicle. Now we're here on this street. It's completely closed off. Tens of thousands of people are moving in here. All signs that the North Korean leader, Kim Jong-un, will probably be here. The North Koreans are showing the opening of a brand new street full of apartment buildings. They want to show the world, despite international sanctions, despite diplomatic isolation, they can still complete projects like this, and they credit one person, their supreme leader. The crowd is silent. There's very heavy security. You can see top Workers' Party leadership lined up there. And when the military band plays one particular tune, that signals the North Korean leader, Kim Jong-un, is arriving.
This is network footage, obviously, but still, you get the idea that
5 years into his rule, it is clear that he holds absolute power over this country.
He sent it back to us,
confident, appearing firmly in control.
Story based from a mix, of course, of what we were able to feed in.
Kim Jong-un cut the red ribbon, walked back to his
use
black
of the phone.
Mercedes limousine, and drove away.
So the other thing that Will has done for us while he's in North Korea is the Instagram stories. So again, this is a really, really great example of how you can connect with your users from on-the-ground storytelling in an immediate capacity.
Hello from Pyongyang. Today is a big day here in North Korea. It's the 85th anniversary of the North Korean Army. There's a U.S. nuclear submarine approaching Busan in South Korea, and there's a lot of speculation about whether there could be a nuclear test or a missile launch. This is a public holiday here in North Korea, which means that citizens are enjoying a rare day off. And as we often see on holidays like this, dancing in the streets.
And then, you know, he's obviously, so what does Will Ripley not do? I know is probably what you're asking, because how does he have time to go on air, write stories, and file against all of these social media platforms? And we really do balance with him because it is a lot, but when you are working on such a special project and you are, like in this case, it was very rare that we were there on this trip, so we really wanted to make a point that we were there. It's just, it's so worth it when it's a huge story. So obviously Will, he's really branding himself as the Inside North Korea reporter, and uses Twitter to even more so let people know that he's the guy, right? So if you are a reporter and you want to specialize in something as a young journalist, you know, Twitter is very helpful at helping you brand yourself. Again, more of the inside, just really great. And then we also did a VR video that Will hosted. So this was of the celebration at night, the parade, and it was one of our most highest performing VR videos on Facebook. And Facebook Live. The signal, obviously, a little touch and go in North Korea, but we were able to do it. And again, it was just really great, hitting it across every single platform that we were there and we were reporting. And then I wanted to show you Patrick Ottman. He is our correspondent down in Cuba. Again, very traditionally, you see Patrick on TV, but he is using his Instagram. And if you, again, another one, 85.8 thousand followers. He's really great. You want to go inside Cuba, follow him on Instagram. Really worked to brand himself, as you can see, Cuba reporter. He's the guy you follow for everything inside Cuba. And he created that himself across his own personal accounts, which I just think it's really helped his brand, it's helped CNN's brand, it allows everybody to know we have somebody there who is covering everything on the ground. Same with his Twitter, right? So I'll end with something flashy and new that we're doing here at CNN, but I think what I wanted to highlight here, especially for the younger journalists, is just how much you can be doing with your phone, right? And how much, you know, a story just doesn't end by writing it, putting it on desktop, putting it on mobile. We have to really think about how to distribute that content and how to add to it. So Will Ripley, sure, he could do his TV hit and then he could, you know, let that live as it does. He could write a digital piece and let that sit, but he's using all these other tools to make sure that he can add to that digital reporting, or he can add to that TV hit, or he can make sure other audiences know that he's there. And I think that that's really, really valuable as a reporter, especially when we start to think about social and mobile. The latest thing I'm going to show you is we did recently launch, we were on Snapchat Discover. For those of you who look into Snapchat Discover and follow us on Snapchat, we recently launched a show, which is a slightly different product. It's video-led. And we are doing the same thing. We're connecting with all of our reporters all around the world to make sure that we're telling video and mobile first storytelling on this show platform. So I'll play this video for you. It's brand new. We launched a month ago. I'm really proud of it. I think it looks great. If you have any feedback ever, let me know. But this is another great example of how we're building video for mobile.
What we're having out here is a hurricane.
A growing humanitarian crisis affecting a persecuted minority in Myanmar. The UN.
One thing you need to know about North Korea's nuclear weapons.
More than 1 million customers, no power. More than 56,000, no water.
It landed in what they call the Japanese exclusive economic zone.
34 people were injured, and in neighboring Macau, 3 people were killed.
But technically, the war is still ongoing because no peace treaty was ever signed.
The situation right now at the moment is desperate. We're desperate in need of help.
It's amazing. This is the most phenomenal thing I've ever seen.
DACA may have ended today, but it does not define who I am. The fight is not over. We've only just started.
All eyes are on this big screen for what we're told will be a major announcement about the missile launch.
I feel like I'm feeling the backwash of a jet engine.
Seeing Rohingya men, women, and children who tell us that they have lost their families.
So the interesting thing about this, obviously you'll notice that the video is all vertical, it's all shot vertical, and everything has text on screen. So obviously text on screen because at least on our end, 80% of our audience, our social audience, is consuming all of this content without their sound on. So I need to be able to deliver the content knowing that they're likely not listening. And then it's all very, you saw the graphics treatment. It's all very, it's big, it's bold. The most important facts are highlighted. When we think about text on screen, it's also, what do I want the user to really take away from? What's the most important piece of information? And so we're using those sort of graphic elements to help elevate that. But Snapchat aside, Instagram stories, both of these platforms have been really eye-opening and really incredible in terms of being able to cover the world right away in very unique ways. So we had Alex Field in Bangladesh, and we were able to turn that around right away, specific for all of these platforms, on a really important story. We had weather correspondents that were down in Florida filing for us immediately. And it's, we look at CNN, it's this huge organization, and the idea of somebody saying, hold on, I have to film this for Snapchat, to me, even 3 years ago, would have been so foreign. And now it's a part of our workflow. When I think about Snapchat and how it's evolved, particularly during the 2016 election, I interviewed every presidential candidate specifically for Snapchat on that platform in video. And I think that was really telling, because when I first started covering politics as we were leading up to the 2016 election, I had done an interview on Snapchat with Rand Paul, and I really had to work very hard to get that interview and to validate the millennial audience that was there and the opportunities that were there on both sides. And then when it came time for the actual, when it came down to Clinton and Trump, it was, Snapchat interview, great. Like, where do we go? We'll put it in. Yeah, definitely. It was almost like they saw the audience the same way that we saw the audience at that point, and it was interesting to see how that even evolved. And now every lawmaker's on Snapchat and Instagram stories, and everyone's using it. But the willingness also evolved with the product and the audience, and that was really interesting. These were sort of the big pictures that I wanted to talk about. How we as a large media organization are using mobile and social to tell stories, but then also how I'm encouraging and using our reporters out in the field to do the same. I'm happy to open it up for questions and talk more about a few things. Hi, sure.
Hi, how big is your team, and are they all located in New York, or are they all around the world?
So I do have a 24/7 global publishing team. So I have 2 producers in Hong Kong, I have 3 producers in London, I have producers in Atlanta, and I have producers in New York. The larger social team, which consists of, which my boss is Sprinkles Dad, is the umbrella over social publishing, which is the team I work the most with, social discovery and social TV. That team is about 40. My team is about 21. And we are a 24/7 operation. And I get that people are like, oh my God, 21 people, 20 people. A lot of that team is actually part of the Snapchat production, which is, roughly about 5 or 6. Producing for Snapchat with all those graphics and all those videos, it is an investment, and it is a production cycle. So that team has resources for it.
Ashley, the people that you have on that team, are they people who were hired because they were fairly native with mobile phones and mobile video, or are they people who transferred from traditional video skills?
It's a mix. I would say specifically for the Snapchat team.
Well, for your social media team.
Some folks on my team came in with no video experience, and it was a skill that they had to learn. I'll even point to myself a little bit. I graduated from college. I went to a small liberal arts college in Massachusetts. I was a political science major. I never touched a camera. I never edited on Premiere. And through just the process of job after job, I suddenly became a very good video editor, a very good shooter. Then I was on a video team, and then I led a video team. And so I learned on the job as I went. And so members of my team are doing the same. I do think if we're going to talk about video, I think video is very important right now. There is an obvious pivot to video, in particular in the social media space. If you're looking at your Facebook feed, I wouldn't be surprised. I did a little non-scientific count for myself recently where every post was video, and it was 15 posts in a row. So video is becoming more important, but I would, it's an interesting mix because first you have to be a really great writer and storyteller, and then you can get to video, right? So really, when we talk about skills, Gary and I were talking last night, and he was like, what do you think really prepares somebody for a job in social? And I was and I have to be honest, I was like, well, creative writing, poetry, English, you have to be a really great writer. And then comes in video. So if you can be all of those things, which I get is like a unicorn, but now we're in that place where we have to, be able to be unicorns. First is, can you tell a really good story? Can you find a really good story, produce really great journalism, and then think of all the ways in multimedia that you can then produce that. So for folks who are young and in school, I would learn all the things. And I had to do it along the way, and it was great. And I think a lesson in that too, and I was talking to some other folks last night about this, but particularly for the young journalists, your first job certainly does not define your career, and you do have to adapt along the way. You see where the future's going, right? And so you force yourself to be a part of that. I was very scared of shooting and editing in the very beginning, and I really had to force myself to learn it. And I stay an extra 3 hours to go out with a photojournalist and learn how to do it. Fine. A lot of time, I always called my experience at NBC, which is I spent the first 5 years of my career there, as like my grad school. I really learned all of the skills. And then I went to Now This right after NBC, and I was really thrown in. They were like, edit this video, and can you have it done in 4 hours? And I was like, oh, sure. And then I became a really great video editor because I was forced to. So you welcome those challenges.
So when you're trying to get mobile video out quickly, what's your editing workflow like, and have you found any tricks to have a quick turnaround time? Like, do you have templates, and like who do you expect to? Yeah, and like who do you expect to do that?
Right. So we talk about templates, right? And we talk about signature. Okay. So when you're on your Facebook feed or when you're on social, you kind of can tell, right? Which video is a Vox video, which video is a CNN video, which video is a Now This video, and all of that's done with graphics and branding. So we do have, you saw part of our template earlier with the Will Ripley video. Those templates are easily used within the Premiere working environment. Is sticking to certain fonts, sticking to certain ways that you credit. You want to be consistent in every video because you don't want your audience to be confused, right? That you want them to know that they are consuming a CNN product. And how do you do that? You do that with a graphics package. And so templates are a really easy way to take in a piece of really great video and then overlay the most important information about that video or about that story.
Hi, I just had a question kind of about like breaking news on Twitter or Instagram or anything like that, where you don't necessarily have the time to plan it all out. So do you see a difference in kind of the reactions you get from when you've planned out like these big posts to when you maybe have like 15 minutes to do something?
Oh, right, sure. So in areas of breaking news, it's a mad dash to first you get your story up, right? So get the story up, it's on Twitter, it's on Facebook. And then again, I have the privilege of just being in a very large organization that's very video centric. So we're gonna immediately go on air with breaking news, and we're probably gonna have a live shot with one of our affiliates or one of our our partners in wherever the area is up quite quickly. And so I would say there's a very short window of time until we have the first story up. And then there's probably, within 30 minutes, we have video from air that we do, that we quickly cut. And then there's a social discovery team. And that team is vetting and feeding all of the on-the-ground UGC that's happening. And then that's quickly, all of those moments are quickly turned for social. And so within the hour, we will have just live updates that are all accompanied by video that's being cleared. And then we'll create within 2 hours, like an original packaged video for social. We'll within 30 minutes probably have something up on Snapchat. But again, that comes with the luxury of being everywhere, right? So we just have those video resources. We are video first, and so that makes it just a little bit easier. In terms of audience reaction, we are a destination for breaking news, and so I think the longer form stuff that we really plan for is more of that like deeper dive journalism that is not breaking news, and audience response, I mean, the reason why we program it out everywhere is to get eyeballs on a really important storytelling. So in a breaking news scenario, I'll always have, we are that trusted name, so people come, and that's what we're the best at. With the big picture, deeper dive stuff, like I said, I want to be very tactful about how that's programmed because I really want people to come into that content. Whereas I know with breaking news, they're already going to be there.
Ashley, the content probably has to take a different form for each platform.
Yes.
And like clearly, what's best displayed on Snapchat is different from Twitter, is different from Facebook. Is that something that your reporters sort of have an inherent understanding of? Or do you teach them?
We teach them.
Okay, and you teach them, here are the key things that make a Snapchat story.
Right. So you bring up a good point. So when we're training, right? We're training our reporters who are out in the field. And also, I sort of have to think of what my big asks are, right? If they're out in a breaking news story, I also have to prioritize. Do I want Snapchat or do I want Instagram? Like, I can't really be too picky when they're serving so many different demands. So we are more and more training and helping our photojournalists and our correspondents know what it's like to shoot vertical video for Snapchat and for mobile, right? You want it wide, you want the background a certain way. What it's like, how do you operate for Instagram? How do you be more casual? How do you be more authentic? And everyone's really open to it, and they've really made it a part of their storytelling, which has been, I started at CNN 3 years ago, and Facebook Live at this point is the equivalent of a live hit on television, right? We've created a culture where social and mobile are a part of the overall package, and it's all just as important as, say, the TV hit or the TV package that's airing. And for folks who are working in smaller newsrooms who sometimes struggle with this, the best way that I have gotten correspondents to understand the value of this, or reporters out in the field to understand the value, is the feedback and the metrics. When I say that 1 million people looked at something, they get it. They're like, okay, there are that many people who are consuming my content. So if Kurt is at the Chicago Trib and he's like, can you please do this Instagram story for me? And they're like, oh, I don't know if I'm going to have time. You're asking me to file so much. It's like, well, the last time you did it, 200,000 people looked at it. It's like, oh, okay. Like maybe I'll do it now, because it really helps elevate not only a personal brand, but also the brand you work for, and spreads out the really good storytelling and reporting that you're doing.
Hey, so do you feel like you, as a video content first, do you feel like you are answering to what Snapchat and Facebook and Twitter have prioritized as content, or do you feel like as a major content publisher, you're pushing how digital media is consumed now? Like, are you saying this is how we're sharing it and you're answering to people, or are you at the whim of the apps that prioritize content?
Right. So I'm of the world that we control all the editorial, right? And the editorial is the first thing. So, no one else other than Will Ripley is telling the really deep inside story of North Korea. And I think it's really important. The network thinks it's really important. It's a really big story. I want to make sure everybody sees it. And I control, my team and CNN control how that then is distributed. So I take the content and I rebuild it for each platform so it fits each platform. And so it's native to each platform. But all editorial full control. Yeah.
You are doing video because video has become important to
the
Facebook feed, or are you doing video because that's the direction that you feel?
Listen, if a video is terrible and it's not a video story, we're not going to tell it in video, right? Here's my biggest thing, and I say this particularly with Snapchat. We have never pretended to be what we're not. We know we're a breaking news platform. We know that big breaking news is our bread and butter. And I think with video, particularly, it needs to be visual, and it needs to be a visual story. So, I'm certainly not in the business of taking a very powerful text, right, and just, reanimating it in a video format so that I can play to an algorithm. No, it doesn't live like that. So I think that's really important, is to not force something into a platform where it doesn't work. What we do is we try and recreate or add to content that our reporters are working on so that it fits the platform. So there would have been a time where maybe Will would have just filed a digital right? But because of the platforms and because of willingness and priorities, he was able to take all that video on his phone and give it back to us so we could tell it in video. And in another time, it might have just been text. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you. CNN is a global network, and at the same time, you are trying to reach very specific audiences. How do you deal with this level of content and frame between this global homogeneous, if you want to put it, and with reaching specific audiences, specific platforms, specific countries, societies, and so on?
Right, so Line, we talked about the messaging app Line, very popular in APAC. All of that content that we push out online is usually content that particular region would be interested in consuming. So for example, the gubernatorial races that are happening and Obama's out campaigning, those stories I'm not going to put on, my team's not going to put that online because we know that audience wouldn't necessarily be interested in a very US-centric story. I have CNN Africa, CNN International, CNN Money, there's CNN Tech, there's all these other verticals that we've created in the social space to create those niche audiences and to appeal to them. So our CNN International audience is, that's where we did a lot of our Catalonia coverage, for example. Our Brexit coverage, for example. New Zealand just elected, I don't know if it was elected, but there was the big story about the new leader in New Zealand. That stays on CNN International. Flying cars in Dubai, or all of those things. That's specific for that audience. And then, of course, there is a lot of, if we're looking to acquire audiences, then there's an audience acquisition strategy that goes into that, which is targeting and paid targeting. But we actually don't do too much of that because I'm fortunate enough to have a large enough audience. But German elections, right, that'll all live with our CNN International audience and verticals. Oh, Gary's very popular.
So when you're hiring, what do you look for?
So when I'm hiring, honestly, the first thing I'm really looking at is attitude and willingness, and I would like a very if you're a young journalist, I want to know that you've interned, and I want the more that you do intern, the better, I will say. And I would also, highlighting and figuring out what you don't like is just as important as figuring out what you do like. So when I was in college, I'd interned in finance and I'd interned in media, and I kind of just figured out, oh, I really like a newsroom, so I'm going to go there. And that was very helpful for me because then I didn't have to second guess myself. So I'm looking for internships. I'm looking for examples. I'm looking for a website. I'm looking for a video. If you say that you're doing something, I want you to show me. I don't want you to tell me. And if you're passionate about news and you're passionate about politics, I would expect that your social media feeds reflect that. And how many times, oh, I love politics. I was salivating over the 2016 election, but all of your social media feeds are fashion. So, I just want to make sure, that, when I'm hiring somebody that they're being honest about, what their skills are and they can show me what they are. And the attitude is important. You go-getters, right? You want to show that you're a go-getter, and I think you can show that through the internships and then all the other extra things you're doing on campus. Are you writing for the student newspaper? Are you working for the student broadcast network? And what have you particularly done that has really stood out in those capacities? So yeah, I learned that show me, don't tell me in kindergarten when I was obviously very young, and it has never left me. And I say it like at least once a week. But yeah, if only I could tell my kindergarten teacher that really stuck with me. But that's true. I want you to show me. I don't want you to tell me. And also clean up your Instagram, by the way, right? Okay, like, I get it, you're in college, woo. But like, we can find that. It's so easy, Oh my God, just look professional. Or like clean it up after your junior year or whatever. Yeah, that's good.
So how do you figure out what matters to people on like CNN Africa or CNN International? Like, how do you make those decisions about, because I imagine that's a much different audience than CNN.
Yeah. So, I mean, listen, right? If something's a really big and important story across the board, who cares if the audience wants to consume it? It's important, we're covering it and putting it out there anyway. So I think that's really important. But for CNN International and CNN Africa, it's audience patterns, it's consumption patterns, right? What is it automobiles? Is it how things are made? Is it innovation? You really have to track. I mean, we have so much data right now that throwing spaghetti at the wall isn't a thing anymore. So if audiences are particularly interested in, I'll tell you, I've got this my Facebook page. They love cars at 3 a.m. I don't know. They love cars at 3 a.m. and they love tech at 4 a.m. So I program to that, right? And it's not like I'm forcing content just because I know it'll work well. I'm going to pick the best piece from CNN Money or CNN Tech that I think is just a really work of art, right? And I'm going to put it up for those time periods, and we'll get the interactions on it, and that's great. For CNN Africa, you just do a deep dive, right? What are people responding to the most? What are they sharing the most? And then that does sort of help figure out what angles that you can work with, what sort of stories you should focus on more. But that doesn't mean that you don't cover the things that are really important though too, right? It's a nice slice to know what your audience might respond to at a certain period of time. But I do, very big data dumps and then categorize what the stories are, look at the shares, look at the audience that in particular interacted with that piece of content. And then, of course, if you have repeat trends, you narrow in on those repeat trends. And that's what we've done.
Kind of just going off of that, if you were talking about Facebook, like specifically, what would you say is like the top insight that you look for to know if that post like succeeded? Is it like likes or shares or reach?
So I look at overall engagements. I'm pro engagement. I do think about people coming back to owned and operated. extensively, I really do. But I think if people are taking an action on the comment on our content, that also really counts for me. And new interactions are really important because that means I've got somebody new and I want to keep them. And so then how do I keep that new person? Or how do I keep that new set of audiences? And that's where what John talked about comes in, is I figure out what that bubble is and what they're consuming and what about that story led to that acquiring, and then what do I learn from that? When we talk about data too, what doesn't work is just as important. So if something doesn't work, stop doing it, right? If you are looking at a data set and you're looking at the stories that had the least amount of interactions, you think about that story and you also think about how it's packaged. What was that headline? What was that picture? Run it again, see what happens that second time, and then see what you learn from that. Was it because the headline wasn't written a certain way? Was there a nugget within the story that was really far down that wasn't in the lead, that should have been in the lead, but it was down in the fourth paragraph? The other way that we have found a little bit of success is taking a really large story and pulling out little nuggets, 3 or 4 of them, running them on Twitter. And whatever's gotten the most amount of retweets has kind of, helped us figure out how we might reframe a story.
Trying to think how to phrase this, but like when I think of all the social media platforms and like I picture like a bunch of different people like running around like posting things.
Yeah,
and, like
spinning like a circus. Yeah.
Yeah,
No,
and like I'm just kind of wondering how you do like quality control. Like how do you like kind of monitor the reporters? Like I just feel like it's all happening so fast. Like
yeah. So the reporters, there are guidelines, right? So if I have people all over the world, there are just basic rules. You have to create a framework. For the actual content, we have a really, really strict editorial process at CNN where when a writer is working on a story, it goes through so many different layers of approval before it even gets to me that I know that pretty much every line and every fact in that has been super triple checked. So that's good, and I really value that because I think it's important. It takes a lot of the heat off, a lot of my publishers. The other thing is the other set of guideline, which is being really transparent about the type of content that you're posting. If it's analysis, you say it's analysis. If it's opinion, you say it's opinion. And it's just with so many people and so much content, it's being incredibly clear with your teams how you label things and then how you share things. So I hope that answers that. But also one of the things that brings me to a good point though, if you're ever in an environment where you're reporting on a really, really big story and it's basically like an exclusive, I wouldn't tweet about that because you don't want to scoop yourself. So that's one thing. I've known people to do that where they find something really great or they're out in the field doing something really incredible or they take a picture and then a competitor picks up on that tweet and then that competitor gets to the story before the person who is actually out in the field reporting on actually reporting on the story. So, I would say if you've got something really juicy and exclusive, keep it to yourself. But yeah.
So you said that there was like strict guidelines for people doing social media on their own. So they're
not like strict, but there's just some like don't break news,
right. So
keep
like
a big story to yourself.
If you're tweeting from your own account, like the Will gentleman in
Will Ripley, yeah,
in North Korea. So it's like he's got his own brand. He's tweeting from his own account. Is he CNN property? Can he tweet whatever he wants, whenever he wants? Like how does that work?
So I represent CNN, and so does everybody else that works at CNN. So that's part of my job. I everything that is going out, even on my accounts, is I'm CNN, right? So in that vein, have to be very careful. I hope that really kind of gets to it. But yes, right? I wouldn't call it property, but I would say a reporter is representative of our brand, and I am representative of the brand. I think we have time for one more, if there's one more question.
Final question? There we
Okay, coming back to the international kind of frame. So you mentioned Africa and how you keep going or pay attention to what is going on online. And we know that following the example of Africa, there is a humongous lack of access to internet. So how do you balance in Africa or in other places of the world in which connections or Facebook access or whatever is not the same that in Western industrialized societies, and in how you cover this lack regarding, for example, languages? So you rely, or any network international rely on the foreign correspondent, which is cutting off right from budget cutting, and or in stringers on the field. So it's very difficult to cover which is actually important, because many times we don't know what is going on because we don't have access to the language or to the field properly. So how do you deal with it?
So I would say, well, first, we're very lucky to have people in so many different places in the world. I would say for mobile access, one of the things that we have started experimenting with is WhatsApp. But again, that does require you to have a mobile phone. So these are challenges that I think every newsroom faces. In terms of I think we really do our, we'd send Alex Field out. We try and send people to places as best as we can and as much as we can. I think we do, again, have the benefit of really looking to be everywhere, and we do challenge ourselves to cover those stories and make sure that we are. But I would say that you bring up a really good point, that I think everybody is challenged by resources when it comes to international storytelling, and then how do we best do it with the resources that we have. And the access is obviously something that, we all face. And I honestly don't know the answer to the access, other than that the best thing that we have started to experiment with so far is WhatsApp. Oh, and the other thing that we did do recently is we actually sent out, we wanted to cover motherhood around the world in really remote areas. So we sent our correspondents who were in, everywhere from, I'm trying to think, we sent them to Iran, we sent them to Bosnia, all over, several different places, and we gave them an envelope with a disposable camera, and we wanted that camera to get to a mom or somebody who had no access to internet, because we wanted to see what motherhood was like in places where we have never been. And then it was we had all the shipping set up so that we could find a way to get them back, and it was really, really cool. I mean, this project was so eye-opening, and I encourage you guys to look it up. It was called Motherhood Around the World, and it was from areas that would be really, really difficult to have any sort of access to, and we tried to find a way to do it. And we did it through, in the age of digital, we did it through disposable cameras. So.
Actually, I love this stuff, so I have a final question.
Oh, excellent.
Yeah, and that is, do you have an idea of how many people access you via mobile only? Their only internet connection is their mobile.
Yes.
And that is?
It's, I think I can say it, it's about 80% of our audience.
And
on social.
That's fairly stunning.
Yes, yes. We are mobile first.
Yes,
Yeah.
and truly are. I mean, you could not have, last year it would have been different.
Yeah. It was, I would say in the last 3 years it's really changed.
Yeah. So the mobile-only internet connection is the internet connection.
In the mobile audience.
Yeah.
I mean, my gosh. How many times are you guys looking at you're in school, so you're on a laptop all the time, but I am almost exclusively phone only, so.
Okay.
It's weird.
Thank you, Ashley.
No, it's not weird, it's good.
Let's thank Ashley.